Incredible rescue. Black veteran discovers baby in sweltering car, faces unexpected fury from mom. Marcus leaned against the rough bark of the oak tree, savoring the moment of quiet in his bustling hometown. The mechanical whir of the auto shop faded into the background as he took a swig of water, the sun blazing overhead like a relentless spotlight. He'd returned home a year earlier, back to the small, diverse town that shaped him and the place he felt he was meant to be. Yet some days, the shadows of his past loomed large, particularly the deep-seated struggles with PTSD that colored his days with unease. Mechanical work had provided refuge, allowing him to translate the chaos in his mind into something tangible. Now, that peace was shattered by a distant sound, a wailing cry of an infant. Panic shot through him. His instincts kicked in. Without thinking, he sprinted toward the source of the cries. His heart hammered against his ribs as he reached a parked car, windows rolled tightly shut, heat radiating from it like a furnace. Beneath the aggressive sunlight, he created a space in his mind to maneuver through layers of urgent thought. What if he was too late? What if that baby was suffering inside? He glanced inside the car and saw a tiny figure, a baby, slumped over the seat, drenched in sweat. The air thickened with despair. His mind raced, teetering between his duty as a veteran and a terrible fear of misunderstanding. He grabbed a rock, his hand shaking with desperation as he shattered the glass. The sound echoed like thunder. The baby's whimpers filled the air as he gently scooped the child into his arms. Relief washed over him, but it didn't last. Just as he took a breath of newfound hope, a figure burst onto the scene. It was the mother, her face twisted with a cocktail of rage, confusion, and disbelief. "Get your hands off my baby," she screamed, her words cutting through his relief. Marcus froze, insecurity seeping in. For all the battles faced abroad, none compared to the tension of standing there, an accused kidnapper in front of the very community he had come back to heal with. His palms turned clammy as he tried to explain. "I was trying to help. She was..." "Help? You're stealing my child," Sarah yelled, her eyes wide with fear born from overwhelming guilt. The crowd began to gather, murmurs falling like curtain drops, testing the air thick with misunderstanding and prejudice. Every glance felt like a knife slicing deeper into his resolve. Stereotypes bubbled beneath the surface, each bite of judgment pulling him under. Before he could retaliate, their eyes locked, a moment where two lives collided explosively. As he held the fragile infant tighter, instinctively protective, yet painfully aware of the assumptions swirling around him, Marcus felt the walls of his own history begin crumbling. How often had he felt misunderstood, watched under a scrutinizing gaze?
He was just trying to save a life, yet the shadows of innumerable societal biases loomed large. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Anxious moments stretched endlessly as he stood there, caught between being a hero and a criminal. He could see the conflict in Sarah's eyes, desperation and anger dancing tenaciously. Did she envision him as a protector or a predator? Tension thickened, breaths were held among the onlookers as whispers spiraled, each suffocating judgment a reminder of the unspoken battles both he and Sarah were waging, her inner chaos mirroring his own. Maxed out with tension, Marcus felt the pressure build as a police cruiser came into view, sirens wailing like a warning bell. Would he be able to prove his intentions? Would there be solace found after this storm? As a shadow loomed over him, anxiety surged through Marcus. He was standing at the precipice of judgment, the chaotic collision unraveling in front of them, leaving only questions of trust, responsibility, and understanding in its wake. Marcus shifted his weight, the glass shards crunching beneath his boot, a stark reminder of the visceral moment that had torn through his attempt at a peaceful return to his hometown. The police cruiser came to a halt, its bright lights casting a harsh glare over the scene, heightening the tensions. As the officers stepped out, their faces were grim and alert, eyes scanning the crowd and then locking onto him, an accusatory focus that made his stomach churn. "Sir, step away from the vehicle," one of the officers commanded, his voice steady, yet laced with a tension that echoed Marcus's own anxiety. Instinctively, he tightened his grip around the baby, an action fueled by the urgency to protect rather than provoke. The feeling of panic washed over him anew as he realized how precarious his situation had become. I was helping her," Marcus stammered, his voice barely above a whisper, as he fought against the rising tide of emotions threatening to drown him. But urgency gave way to uncertainty. Would his military training, a life devoted to protecting and serving, be valid in this moment? Would it matter amidst the echoing hostility that now surrounded him? Sarah stood among the encroaching crowd, her face painted with fear and confusion. The rawness of her emotions mirrored his own. She was taking deep breaths like she was trying to steady a wild storm within.
He glimpsed her humanity through the chaos. She wasn't just a mother enraged at a perceived threat. She too was afraid of judgment, of failure, of losing control. To Marcus, the unspoken weight of community expectations hung in the air like thick fog. Would he be seen as a savior or a scapegoat? In that fleeting moment of honesty between their eyes, he saw the potential for mutual understanding, but the thrumming heartbeat of the situation pulled them further apart. A noise in the background ignited his former rage. Prejudice and fear once again raised their ugly heads, threatening to overshadow the actual ordeal. As the officers approached, laptops and notebooks in hand, Marcus was struck by an epiphany. This wasn't just about him or Sarah. It was about perception. How often in his own life had he acted out of impulse, judged or misjudged others based solely on first appearances? His military training had taught him the importance of seeing past the surface, of understanding the underlying truths hidden beyond what the world wanted him to see. Determination grew within him as he prepared to speak again, to clarify not only his intentions, but the shared humanity between him and Sarah. Marcus took a steadying breath. Listen, I served. I fought for people to have their voices heard. I chose to help because I believed it was the right thing to do. His words felt like an anchor against the tidal wave of judgment pressing in from every side. Yet the officers were not swayed. You recognize that breaking a window is a crime, right? One of them replied, an unyielding frown deepening his brow. The truth rattled through Marcus, a harsh embodiment of his fear. Was his attempt to do good now morphing into an act of defiance, sealing his fate in a way he never anticipated? As the baby squirmed in his arms, Marcus felt a cleaving realization. This was his moment to channel his experiences into a narrative of redemption, but he had to act quickly before the situation spiraled too far out of control. He prepared his next words, a strategic push for understanding sprinkled with vulnerability. But before he could gather his thoughts, Sarah stepped forward, her voice trembling yet resolute. He's right. He didn't mean any harm. I panicked. The crowd shifted, conversations flaring anew, and for a moment Marcus glimpsed a potential reconciliation. Would they all, he and Sarah, along with the onlookers, find redemption, or would the weight of misjudgments draw them further apart? He knew the stakes were high. Silence reigned, and he felt the eyes of strangers burn into him. Just as clarity began to settle in his mind, a new siren echoed in the distance, one unmistakably different, heralding another revelation that could change everything. The time had come to confront all that lay ahead. Would he embrace the shadows haunting him, or could he transform this moment of chaos into a catalyst for his own healing? Marcus's pulse quickened as the new siren grew louder, slicing through the thick tension in the air. It was a horrifying reminder that the situation at hand was spiraling beyond personal boundaries, invading the core of his being. He felt thrumming in his chest, each beat echoing his desire to regain control over a narrative that had now spun wildly out of reach. The officer's scrutiny remained steadfast. "What were you thinking?" Marcus grappled with the weight of the question. The officer's accusation peeled back layers of his previous demeanor, revealing a vulnerability he had long thought buried beneath the armor of his military training. Marcus, once resolute, now stood on the precipice of a judgment that transcended this moment, a test of character forged in the fires of his past. His thoughts swirled. In the military, decisions had been simplified, mission parameters clearly defined the line between right and wrong. But here, in this small town, amidst the fragmented glass and the fearful glances of a gathering crowd, morality was anything but black and white. The urgency to act collided with the realization that sometimes the right choice could be misconstrued as the wrong one. Internal conflict tugged at him, yet as Sarah's terrified gaze flitted between him and the officers, clarity began to crystallize. "No one ever expects to find themselves in a situation like this," Marcus began, his voice steadier, a crafted aid to untangle the deep-rooted misunderstandings. His words turned heavier with the weight of uninhibited truth. "I know the fear of losing control. I've been in those moments too. But I acted because the alternative, it kept my mind racing. I couldn't walk away knowing a life was in jeopardy." Something flickered in the officer's eyes, a momentary crack in his stern facade as he leaned in, seeking to absorb Marcus's sincerity. Then the siren faded, replaced by multiple voices thick with speculation. Feeling a sudden surge of indignation, Marcus continued, "What we do here today isn't just about condemning actions, it's about recognizing the human experience.
Sarah was scared, just like I am now. We made choices, but those choices don't define our worth. They're how we learn. The crowd shift conveyed the wavering conviction in their perceptions. Marcus could sense uncertainty simmering beneath the surface. He thought about the battles he had faced overseas, where fear often masqueraded as bravery. Each confrontation, however small, taught him that true courage lay in vulnerability, in owning one's failings while striving for something greater. Please understand, I wasn't breaking in. I was trying to break the cycle of neglect. He chased his thoughts, as he battled with clarity against an avalanche of doubt. I am not a criminal for helping, and I don't intend to be one today. I am here asking for understanding, because isn't that what humanity is about?
As if to punctuate his plea, a sudden wind swept through the crowd, carrying with it the scent of rain, a potential cleansing to the tensions that filled the air. Marcus could feel the moment shift, the collective exhale that spread through those gathered. A low murmuring broke out, people grappling with the shift in the narrative. The police officers exchanged glances. The authority they wielded felt eroded by an emerging empathy, however tentative. Yet just as Marcus dared to hope for resolution, a voice broke through the tumult, cutting through the fragile atmosphere with an unexpected force. "He'll pay for this!" A tall figure emerged from the crowd, a familiar face, clad in a hiking jacket, accusation etched into the lines of his brow. Marcus's heart sank. Dave, his childhood nemesis, whose disdain for those different from him was almost legendary. This was a confrontation he hadn't anticipated, a shadow from his past aiming to draw blood on the scraps of his integrity. "Everything you fought for in the military doesn't matter here, Marcus. You think we want your kind messing with our town?" The animosity crackled in the air, pulsing with a palpable energy that instantly intensified the atmosphere, heightening Marcus's own fight-or-flight instinct. The turning point had arrived. The potential for healing fluttered ominously above them, but now he stood squarely before the embodiment of division. He could either cower under the weight of reproach or forge a path toward personal redemption. What would he choose? This confrontation could either cement him as a villain or elevate him into a role he hadn't initially embraced. Both the crowd and the officers were watching. The chaos of conflicting emotions hung like a sword over him, and he felt the deep pull to either rise to meet the challenge or succumb to the shadows that whispered doubts louder than the sirens ever had. In a moment that felt timeless, Marcus prepared to either stand his ground or unleash a tempest of his own. Would this unwelcome confrontation unearth a hidden strength, or would it thrust him deeper into the darkness? The answer awaited him in the charged silence. Marcus took a deep breath, gathering the fragments of his resolve. The bitterness in Dave's words gnawed at him, clawing at vulnerabilities he thought he had conquered. He stood at a precipice, teetering between the urge to defend himself and the instinct to rise above the personal animosities of the past. "Do you even understand what it's like to make a choice in a moment of panic?" he shot back, voice steady yet laced with anger. "I didn't enter this car for a thrill or to provoke anyone. If I had seen a child in danger, I wouldn't hesitate. Would you?" Dave's sneer deepened, eyes narrowed as he prided himself on the delineation he drew between them. "I'd never act blindly like you. You think you're some kind of hero, running around, saving people? More like a fool in over his head."
The crowd tensed again. The animosity created a rift, and Marcus felt the weight of their judgment shift toward him. Dave represented every taunt and sneer of his childhood. It was not just a personal confrontation, but a battle against everything he had struggled to overcome. Marcus's heart raced. The old wounds of being an outsider resurfaced with ferocity. "Listen to yourself, Dave," Marcus barked, feeling a fire ignite within him, propelling his words forward. "You don't know the first thing about courage or the gut-wrenching decisions that come in the face of responsibility. That's not heroism I'm after. It's simply humanity." He allowed the words to linger, letting them marinate in the freshly tensed air. The weight of truth in his tone, borne by years of combat and moral assessment, challenged the very foundation of Dave's contempt. In that moment of confrontation, Marcus grasped a vital insight. The battle ahead was not merely external, but more profoundly internal. He remembered the training he had undergone, the way he had learned to adapt under pressure. Living with the specter of combat had made him acutely aware of moral dilemmas. Every confrontation served as an opportunity for profound reflection. It was a lesson interwoven into the fabric of his being, and now it demanded a reckoning. Ultimately, Marcus realized he had to choose not only how to handle the external conflict, but how to engage with his own past. Marcus straightened, his spine aligning with new purpose. What I did today had nothing to do with being a hero. It was about putting fear aside and standing up for those who can't stand for themselves. I'm no fool. I just see beyond the discomfort of our own biases. He could sense the visceral reaction of the assembled crowd, and subtly he registered shifting sentiments. Some began to nod, others whispered within themselves as the fog of oppression lifted. Perhaps they too had grappled with perceptions shaped by fear. In that moment, he recognized the power of vulnerability to forge connections, even with the most divisive figures from his past. Dave still loomed before him, eyes flashing defiantly, but somewhere behind that mask of hatred lay uncertainty. Marcus's growing determination charged his next words. You might not get it, but I will not let your words silence my conviction. What it kills isn't fear, but our shared humanity. Just as he thought this new connection might unify the crowd, Dave stepped closer, dangerously narrowing the space between them. You think you can win hearts with your sob story? There's a reason some don't want you around. You'll never truly belong. A flicker of fear sliced through Marcus, but rather than retreat, he drew strength from that vulnerability. He lifted his chin, grounding himself. Belonging isn't a privilege up for debate. It's a right everyone deserves, including you. I'm here because I thought I could make a difference, and that's not up for you to dictate.
A sudden tension filled the air, the crackling static growing heavy as onlookers swayed back and forth, caught in the heated exchange. What had started as a confrontation threatened to become a revelation for both men. But could any of that be enough to awaken compassion in Dave? As the silence thickened, Marcus sensed a shift in the crowd, a ripple of readiness, as if they too were prepared for transformation. Could he pull this moment together, not just for himself, but to challenge others to confront their own shadows? But before he could venture further into the tension bubbling beneath the surface, an unwanted interruption shattered the moment. This nonsense has gone on long enough. You need to leave this town, Marcus. The voice came from deep within the assembly, an unexpected coldness wrapping around Marcus once again, locking him in a renewed struggle against the adversity that had once defined him. Would Marcus summon the resilience built through years of choosing empathy over animosity, or would he falter amidst the rising tide of resistance? The next step loomed challenging, clashing with the hope he had begun to establish once more. The deep-seated chill in the voice that cut through the tension sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. He turned slightly, searching the faces in the crowd for the source of the comment. The anger radiating from those assembled began to press against him like a suffocating weight. Some faces were sympathetic, while others wore masks of disdain. The venom seeped into his thoughts, filled with thoughts of failure. "Leave," he murmured under his breath, doubt creeping into his mind. He had spent years carving out a space he believed would lead to acceptance and purpose, and yet here he was, faced with a demand to uproot himself again. It was a questioning of his worth, an assessment that punctured through his growing sense of self-assurance. "Look, everyone," Dave smirked, embodying the animosity of the crowd. "He's scared. Are you going to stand by and let him play martyr, or will you finally admit he's just a tragic joke?" Marcus refused to let the words dictate his response. Internally, he steeled himself against Dave's provocations. This was a soldier's war, not fought with weapons and aggression, but with resilience and the power to refuse defeat. He took a long, steadying breath, letting the stale air wash over him like an unsteady tide. "Am I a joke?" he called, allowing his voice to gain strength from an inner reservoir of purpose. "To you, maybe, but the life of every single human being is worth fighting for. If I can change one life, even just through this moment, then I've succeeded in being a part of something greater than myself." He watched as a few heads nodded in acknowledgement. Others remained locked in their judgment, but Marcus's words began to swirl and lift like eddies in water.
He was evolving before their eyes, no longer the timid man searching for validation, but a resolute figure, grounded by the sheer necessity of his principles. He understood that every battle he faced rattled more than his exterior sense of comfort. It echoed back to the very core of who he was. Forcing himself to articulate a plan formed in the depths of his frustration, he took another step forward, shifting the tension toward proactive dialogue rather than reactionary hostility. "So, what will it be?" he asked, addressing the crowd directly. "Am I to run and hide like a coward? Or are we going to have a conversation about what it truly means to belong, what it means to be a community looking after one another?" A ripple of uncertainty now rolled through those watching, and Marcus could sense the tide shifting once more. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone standing around him, wrapped in the same frustrations, divided by fear, but yearning for connection. He vividly recalled the days when he had stood on similar ground, feeling the same isolation that haunted them now. But who would dare to make that leap into shared vulnerability? He focused on those who had offered slight nods of agreement and urged, "You felt it, right? The fear of being rejected, of being cast out because of those you love? Maybe it's time we take a leap of faith together. I've been told I'm not welcome, yet I'm still fighting, still here, because my actions speak more than my past." Just as a stir of hope gathered momentum in a crowd, Dave's voice sliced through once again. "You think you can make a difference? Who are you but a man running from his shadows? Just admit it, no one wants you here." Marcus's heart raced, but he stood firm, body tense as he fought against the rising tide of doubt. "I'm here to confront those shadows, to challenge you to do the same instead of sulking in fear. If I can step into that darkness, why can't you face your own?" Those words hung in the air, a provocative challenge echoing back at both Dave and the assembly. Whether they acknowledged it or shied away from the truth was entirely in their hands. The specter of doubt still washed over Marcus as he considered the gravity of his next move. Could he stand firm against not just Dave, but against the collective weight of past grievances? The silence stretched, temptation thick to pull back and retreat, but instead he held strong, realizing he had everything to gain and nothing to lose. With each moment, he sensed their perception of him transforming, from outsider to an unexpected catalyst, igniting buried embers of hope for something greater. His next response hung tantalizingly in the air, primed to challenge everything they thought they knew about their shared humanity. But with Dave staring him down, he knew the risk was grave. Everything hung in the balance. What was the next chapter for Marcus and the crowd waiting in this charged atmosphere?
Would he lean into the support he felt building, or would he succumb to the shadows threatening to engulf him? The Polaris of their responses hovered before him, daring him to discover the truth. Marcus felt the weight of the moment press upon him, the crowd's collective breath catching as if their air had turned thick with anticipation. He focused on his instincts, those primal urges that guided him to this crossroads, where he stood not as an individual, but as a beacon, a mirror reflecting the fears that bound them all. "Listen," he began, his voice steadier now, the conviction sharpening his words like blades from a whetstone. "I get it. Fear can hold us hostage, making us desperate to turn against one another. But what happens if we confront that fear together? What if we manage our shadows instead of letting them dictate our lives?" Somewhere in the audience, he caught a flicker of understanding, a small spark igniting behind a pair of weary eyes. But doubt still lingered in the air, wrapping around the bitter taste of confrontation, echoing Dave's disdain. Could they grasp the essence of acceptance he yearned to instill? Dave stepped forward, his bravado dripping with venom. "What makes you think you know fear, Marcus? You're not the only one who's ever faced something daunting. Don't you dare pretend your struggles are worse than everyone else's." The taunting undertow made the crowd murmur, hesitant to commit to either side. Marcus bristled slightly, but he wouldn't allow Dave to divert him from the mission that had become intertwined with his very existence. "No one's saying my struggles are worse. I'm saying we need to pull together, not tear each other apart. I'm here fighting through my pain so I can help others through theirs. You could take this opportunity to be part of that, but choosing to hurl insults only brings more suffering." The shift in the crowd began to crystallize,
a subtle transformation. He saw the tension in faces beginning to thaw as they reeled from his unexpectedly profound challenge. Could vulnerability, he wondered, be the bridge they all needed to cross? "Marcus," someone from the fringe of the crowd called out, a voice filled with tremors. "What if we can't trust you? What if this is just another facade?" That question pierced through him, a crumbling block in the edifice of hope he had dared to raise. He took a measured breath, memories of his past flickering through his mind. The feeling of alienation each time he had been dismissed or judged weighed heavily. What would it take for them to see beyond their skepticism? He leaned slightly forward, enveloped in a rare moment of unshielded honesty. Trust isn't simply given. It must be earned through transparency and action. I stand before you today unabashedly, not to ask for your acceptance without merit, but to show you through my actions that I am here, enduring just as all of you are. Life in its rawest form can bring us together.
Are we not ready to fight for something greater than our doubts? The weight of their mistrust seemed to lessen, rippling as they grappled with his earnestness. Yet even amidst this burgeoning connection, he felt Dave's presence looming like a dark cloud, ready to unleash another storm. You think that's enough, that just speaking from the heart can change things? Life's not that easy. Marcus recognized the emotional landmine beneath Dave's provocation, an undisguised fear of failure. The irony of it stung. In this moment, they were not fundamentally different. Instead of responding with bitterness, he chose to empathize. "Perhaps it isn't," Marcus said evenly. "But if we don't start somewhere, I fear we'll be condemned to existing at the mercy of our perceptions of one another." Here lay the tender crux of it all. A transformative opportunity was unfolding. He could feel the collective focus sharpening, teetering on the brink of a conscious choice, to join him in exploration or retreat into the dark recesses of their fears yet again. And as their attention wavered, uncertainty loomed like an encroaching storm, waiting for action. Marcus glanced at Dave and saw not just a foe, he witnessed the embedded wounds of fear, frustration, and a desperate need to protect his fragile sense of belonging. If only Dave realized the potential for growth that lay within their confrontation. "Are we truly brave enough," Marcus challenged, "to confront our struggles rather than hide from them? Let's explore a future painted by our shared vulnerabilities instead of our judgments." As the tension heightened, a charged silence enveloped the group, leaving an undeniable question hanging. Was this a pivotal moment for change, or would they succumb yet again to fear, closing the door to the possibility of connection? And in that moment, longing for succinct resolution fought against doubt, igniting a desire within Marcus to not only confront his fears, but to transform them into stepping stones for others yearning for release. As he faced the crowd, he thought of the hidden potential woven into each individual, merely waiting for momentous decisions to reveal their true colors. Would they rally against their fears or handcuff themselves to the past? The crossroads stood stark before him, but Marcus felt a growing determination sparking within, urging him onward to discover who he could become amidst immense uncertainty. What awaited him on the other side of possibility? With eyes locked on prospects lingering within the silence, he understood the essential truth. The path forward could unravel with every choice he made, and perhaps, just perhaps, the most consequential choice lay ahead. Marcus held his breath, the charged silence around him an electrifying backdrop to his inner turmoil. Every heartbeat seemed amplified, a reminder of the stakes weighed against the fragility of their collective hesitation. Was he truly prepared for what lay ahead? To stand before this tumult, a battleground of human emotion, was no simple feat. The uncertainty, palpable and heavy, pressed in from all sides, threatening to consume him if he showed any weakness. As the quiet stretched longer, he realized that the key to dismantling the walls that had been erected around their hearts wouldn't come from grand proclamations. It would boil down to this: showing them the raw essence of human experience, the tangled triumphs and failures carved into the fabric of resilience. But how? How could he effectively translate his painful odyssey into a beacon of hope? "Let me share a truth," he began again, lowering his voice, inviting openness. "I am not an infallible hero. I am flawed, just like every one of you. I've stumbled, I've fallen, and I've felt the biting cold of isolation. If I can rise from that depth, so can you." A sudden admiration flickered in some of the faces surrounding him, a reflection of the struggles they too carried. He realized that more than understanding, they craved relatability. They needed to witness authenticity in its rawest form.
But as he glanced at Dave, still poised to launch another attack, Marcus felt a pang of foreboding. Would he be able to maintain this connection amid relentless opposition? "Listen," Dave interjected, voice dripping with disdain. "You think sharing your pain is a solution? It's just noise. The real world isn't so forgiving. Life doesn't bend to your feelings." On one hand, Marcus recognized the truth in Dave's words, a reality sometimes harsh and unyielding. But within that reality lay a kernel of possibility. "Maybe life isn't forgiving," Marcus replied, his tone unwavering. "But that doesn't mean we surrender to our pain. We must learn to embrace it and forge stronger from our trials. Every story, including ours, is a step towards healing." In the depths of his response, he felt his own resolve forging stronger. He would not merely preach from the pedestal of experience. He would lay bare his vulnerabilities. This was the moment to allow his truth to resonate amid their gathering storm. "Let me be candid," he continued, eyes scanning the growing intrigue in the crowd. "There are nights I struggle to breathe, sinking into despair with thoughts rapidly spiraling out of control. I'm terrified of failing every single day. But it is within that fear I find my power, my purpose, to share this life with you." An unexpected ripple spread among the crowd, and he sensed a shift. The insecurity that had draped over several faces began to lift, exposing glimmers of thoughtfulness, and maybe even courage. "I've had many failures that felt like the end of the line," he admitted, "but each time I chose to get back up, to redefine myself, and I challenge you all. Can we do this together? Can we forge resilience through our shared stories of pain?" He extended his hand outward, a silent invitation echoing in the stillness. Would they take that leap into the unknown with him?
Or would fear once again dictate their fate? Dave stepped forward, visibly agitated. "You think we're just going to put our trust in your hands? That we'll forget our history because of your sob story?" The tension kicked back tenfold, a tangible thrust of anger competing against Marcus's newfound clarity. He would not engage in a battle of words. Instead, he focused on the crowd, hoping that his vulnerability might overshadow the toxicity of doubt. "You're right, Dave," he replied calmly. "You don't have to trust me yet. But what if we hold each other's stories, create a shared foundation instead of constructing barriers? It doesn't have to be about blind faith. It can start with curiosity, with being open to hearing each other out." The spectators shifted, eyes darting between both men. Though some still hung on to skepticism, others seemed to engage with the humanity that Marcus portrayed. He could sense the potential for connection awakening, a fragile yet fervent ember lighting hearts steeped in doubt. But time was running short, and he couldn't let the moment slip away. "Imagine a space where our fears don't isolate us but connect us," Marcus urged, his resolve crystallizing with determination. "What's the worst that could happen? The price of staying locked in silence and mistrust is far greater than risking vulnerability together." His words hung momentarily, suspended between hope and fear. Would they muster the courage to follow him into the realm of shared experience and mutual healing? As the silence deepened again, a new question flared into awareness. Did he possess enough strength to lead them away from their shadowy corners, while ensuring that he wouldn't dwell in his own? The path forward loomed large and risky, but its potential shimmered tantalizingly close. With tension crackling in the air, he needed to confront not only Dave, but also the unrelenting shadow of his internal demons. How far would he have to go to fully embrace the role of guide amid the unforgiving terrain of human emotion? The answer eluded him, waiting somewhere just beyond the horizon of possibility. Each moment felt like a step into the abyss, revealing the undeniably unnerving truth. There was no turning back now. Marcus's heart raced, not merely from anxiety, but from a fierce resolve igniting within him. He could feel the tensions amongst the crowd, palpable like a thick fog, and amidst that fog, a flicker of hope shimmered. Yet amidst the flickering light, shadows of doubt still clawed at him. Could he really facilitate a transition from fear to connection? Dave's sneer lingered in the air like the horrible aftertaste of bitter coffee. "Curiosity? You think sharing feelings matters?" he spat. Marcus met Dave's eyes directly. There was no room for retreat now. He had chosen a path where clarity demanded courage, not just for him, but for everyone gathered. "What if it does, Dave?"
What if our pain, when shared, doesn't make us weaker, but actually bridges the gaps between us? His words fell into the silence, and he saw the room holding its breath, considering. He sensed the potency of vulnerability, how it had the power to incite both fear and connection. Amid the charge of the atmosphere, a familiar strength surged within him. He had felt this before, the courage to expose oneself in the face of severe skepticism. Trust doesn't just appear overnight. It's built moment by moment, he continued, focusing on the collective. But breaking down the walls starts with admitting our struggles as real and worthy of sharing. He could feel the shift in the air, see a ripple of thoughtfulness weaving through the crowd, faces softening, the hard lines of disbelief starting to blur. But each step forward came with rising stakes. A part of him whispered warnings, reminding him of the myriad of past failures, the times he had faltered under pressure. Yet another part urged him forward. Here lay the real battle, not against Dave or anyone else, but against his own propensity to shrink back when faced with discomfort. Let me tell you about a pivotal moment in my journey, his voice steadied. There was a time I lost everything, my job, my friends, my sense of self. I felt displaced, like a puzzle piece that no longer fit anywhere. I nearly succumbed to despair, convinced that I wouldn't rise again. But in those darkest moments, I discovered the undeniable truth. Our battles do not define us, but our responses to them do. He observed the crowd carefully. A few faces were still skeptical, but now he noticed nods of tentative agreement, hinting at a connection forming. Their shared struggle became a thread weaving them together, rather than a fabric of separation. Let's explore that together, he proposed, his conviction growing stronger. Step into your own stories, those battles and victories, however small they may seem, because it is through the act of sharing our truths that we start to heal. But then he felt the palpable tension again. Dave, unyielding, scoffed as if to dismiss the revelations blossoming around them. So, you think everyone is going to just have a feel-good session and hug it out? Life isn't that simple. You've had your moment, it's still a harsh world out there. Marcus inhaled sharply, recognizing that this was it, the moment of confrontation. Ignoring the negativity, he decided to position himself as a beacon for others to rally around. You're right, there are no easy solutions, but isn't it worth exploring? Maybe despair is the path that brings us to hope. I'm not asking for blind trust, I'm asking for authenticity. Sharing pain is not weakness, it's resilience in the most profound form. The dynamics in Dave's stance faltered, his expression transforming from aggression to contemplation.
Suddenly, the fabric of the room felt less adversarial and more vulnerable, the embers of hope kindling brightly despite the surrounding shadows. And there it was, a fragile slipstream of connection sparking in the air, bridging the divide. In that moment, Marcus felt a rush, the realization that progress was more than a destination, it was sharing the journey itself. Yet, even as he relished the shimmer of possibility, a foreboding thought loomed large. Could he maintain this momentum, push beyond the tipping point where doubt lay in wait to trap him again? The crowd's faces seemed to pulsate with questions, and deep down he felt unprepared but unyielding. Marcus recognized he would have to confront not only the doubts lingering in others, but also the heavier, more troubling shadows nestled in his own psyche. Could he truly navigate this treacherous landscape while demanding the inner strength required to keep moving forward? Each heartbeat whispered the truth. The time had come to face not just the audience, but the entire spectrum of his fears. What awaited him on the other side of vulnerability? As he gazed into the eager yet hesitant eyes of those around him, he realized he had slipped into uncharted territory, and the stakes had never felt higher. The air crackled with anticipation as Marcus stood before the crowd, a tempest of thoughts swirling within him. He could feel the weight of their expectations, the urgency of his mission nesting deep in his chest like a caged bird desperate to soar. This was not just about transforming the mood of the room, it was about transcending his own limitations. Slowly, he realized that every moment he hesitated only served to reinforce the walls that had long kept him and others from true connection. With a steely resolve, he took a step forward, grounding himself in the present. "Let's not evade the discomfort," he said, surprising even himself with the authority in his tone. "I want us to confront it together. Who among us is willing to step up first?" For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Marcus glanced around the room, searching for a face that might take the plunge, someone to set in motion the real dialogue he craved. He longed for a voice of struggle that could join his in this fragile space, a testimony of pain shared,
a reminder that they could become a collective tapestry of resilience above all else. Finally, a woman in the back raised her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. "I lost my father last year," she confessed, her voice quaking yet defiant, "and I didn't know how to talk about it." The room tightened as discussions looked to her like moths to a flame, lured by the vulnerability she offered. "What kept you from sharing your pain?" Marcus inquired gently, his heart pounding at the potential for connection. "Fear," she replied, tears glinting in her eyes. "Fear that people wouldn't understand or that they would judge me for mourning longer than I should have."
He nodded, feeling an enormous sense of kinship with her words. He had faced similar fears, once convinced that dragging his baggage forward would only tarnish the little light he had managed to amass. Yet here she was, unlocking a reservoir of pain that bound them all. Encouraged by her candor, Marcus pressed on, stoking the embers of revelation in the group. He invited others to share their own tales of sorrow, their elbows nudging closer to the edge of vulnerability. As the stories unfurled, the atmosphere shifted. The crowd began to feel less like an audience and more like a family. Each revelation built upon the last, a growing quilt of shared experiences stitched together by the threads of empathy and understanding. With every confession, he felt a corresponding release within himself. He discovered that his past wasn't merely a collection of painful memories, but also the fertile ground from which resilience took root. Everyone's story further illuminated his own, drawing lines in the sand between isolation and shared humanity. Yet, just as the conversation peaked with authenticity, Marcus sensed a familiar ripple of doubt, whispering in the back of his mind. Was this enough? Would these shared stories lead to real change, or would his moment of courage lead to nothing but fleeting comfort? The churning thoughts spurred him to delve deeper. What does this healing look like for each of us, he asked, gauging responses from their collective vulnerability. What actions do we take after this moment? How do we ensure we are not slipping back into silence and solitude? His inquiries shifted the room, casting a spell of introspection. He observed furrowed brows, expressions of determination mingling with uncertainty. It should have reassured him. After all, these were the signs of depth and commitment to change. Instead, each furrow in their brows mirrored questions he had long avoided within himself. Could he lead them toward actionable resolutions that could stir not just their hearts but their lives? What would happen if he failed to help others cultivate this sense of accountability? The moment weighed heavily as the softness turned brittle, the warmth of connection facing the impending reality of accountability. Marcus inhaled deeply, feeling the moisture of unshed tears and doubt settling across his chest. "I want to be here for you," he finally said, voice catching. "But you also must be here for yourself. The change begins within. Let's not lose this momentum." But the looming thought nagged at him. Had he truly equipped them for the hardness of what lay ahead? His stomach twisted, the gnawing sense that some battles were shared, but the skills to fight them belonged to each individual lurked in the shadows. With curiosity creeping back in, he realized the next step, confronting the deeper implications of their revelations.
What if, beneath the surface, their struggles echoed with not just pain, but latent strengths waiting to be uncovered? Feeling the flicker of a new spark igniting in his mind, he caught a glimpse of what lay one step ahead, a chance to unearth hidden potentials, a collective excavation of their latent capacities. As the warmth simmered, Marcus stood at the threshold of understanding, contemplating the unveiling of hidden talents trailing just beneath the surface. The air crackled anew with possibility, and a question danced tantalizingly in front of him. Were they ready for the next phase of their journey? Marcus felt the weight of the moment like never before, a blend of urgency and hope suspended in the air. This was no longer just about deflecting Dave's hostility or addressing the crowd's fears. It was about transforming pain into purpose, igniting a fire of connection that could uplift them all. Standing strong, he knew the time had come to shift from sharing past struggles to exploring collective potential. "Each of you has shared a piece of your truth," he began, stepping further into the light, his voice carrying over the gathering. "But let's ask ourselves, what do we need to do now? How do we turn these stories of sorrow into sources of strength?" The faces before him spoke of a mixture of apprehension and yearning. The desire for change mingled with the shadows of doubt. Yet Marcus felt a tremor of excitement coursing through him, a realization dawning that healing wasn't an endpoint. It was a journey, one they could embark on together. "Imagine," he continued, "if we harness the power of our pain, our experiences, to propel us forward.
What if we held workshops to help others like us? Create a community where we can openly discuss our fears, triumphs, and everything in between. As he proposed the idea, he could feel the ebb and flow of the crowd's energy. Their curiosity ignited a fire of possibility. A woman in the front nodded vigorously, her expression shifting from uncertainty to intrigue. Yes, we could have support groups, teach each other how to break free from the chains of our past. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, heads nodding. Marcus seized the moment, encouraged by their enthusiasm. Exactly. We can create a mentorship program, pairing those of us who face challenges with younger generations, offering them guidance and support. One by one, others began to rise to the occasion. Their excitement transcended the previous tension. Ideas poured forth, organizing community cleanups, mental health workshops, creating safe spaces for vulnerable discussions. Each suggestion built upon the last, a collaborative tapestry of growth woven from mutual understanding. Marcus felt a profound sense of connection flooding his chest, suffusing him with both pride and relief.
He realized that they weren't just articulating ideas. They were actively carving a path toward a shared goal, rejecting the notion of silence and isolation, and embracing accountability and collaboration instead. But amidst the hope blooming around him, doubt still whispered in Marcus's mind. Would they truly commit to this journey? Would they navigate the complexities of vulnerability together? Or would fear of judgment rear its head once more? Then, unexpectedly, Dave stepped forward again, though this time his posture was markedly different. "Look," he began cautiously, the defiance still present, but now tinged with uncertainty. "Maybe I've been too harsh. I don't know if I can trust Marcus or anyone else here, but perhaps working together could change things, for us all." The vulnerability in Dave's voice startled everyone, including Marcus, who hadn't expected such a turn. "You don't have to trust everyone," Marcus said, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "We're asking you to trust yourself and the process. Trust your ability to try something different." Dave's brow furrowed, yet in that moment there was a flicker of openness. "Fine," he muttered. "Let's see how this could work. But I'm not standing by anyone who isn't real about it." "Great," Marcus beamed, feeling a swell of warmth for Dave's tentative willingness to engage. "Our journeys might be different, but we can all bring our unique perspectives to the table. It's that very diversity that will strengthen us." As excitement pulsed through the group, tangible as the air around them, Marcus understood that he had crossed a crucial threshold. The journey ahead would demand work, but they were armed with the foundational elements needed to create true change: connection, vulnerability, and accountability. In this moment, Marcus felt the shadows of his past dissipate, while new possibilities unfolded before him. He had transformed from a man overwhelmed by his history into a catalyst for change, a leader who had shifted the perspectives of his community. With eyes shining with new determination, he declared, "Let's take this momentum and set a date for our first gathering. We will share our experiences, brainstorm initiatives, whatever it takes to ensure we're no longer living individually, but collectively." As cheers resonated through the crowd, a sense of camaraderie solidified, and Marcus felt locked in. This was his achievement, not alone, but as a foundation for transforming collective shadows into a cascade of light. Finally, he stood in a place of solid confidence, recognized not just for his valor in the military, but for stepping into the unknown and welcoming growth. Each heartbeat perched on the precipice of possibility, and he could see the horizon glimmering with hope. This was a fulfilling tribute to his individual growth. Now Marcus stepped forward, the leader he had always aspired to be, embodying the potential for change fostered within the stories shared. The climb wouldn't always be easy, but he no longer had to conquer those mountains in solitude. He was ready to uplift, teach, and guide those around him. This was truly where his new chapter began. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. You need to subscribe now. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.